Hey, Nick. And yes, I'm mute. But that's not the point now. Today you will find out how a tiny, risky game from 1986, made by a guy who thought he'd failed, became the most legendary franchise in video game history. The reason every open-world game since 2000 owes it a debt. So what happened? How did a game about a boy in a green hat and a sword become the greatest thing ever made? And why does it still sell millions, even 40 years later? Let's go back to 1983, Japan. Nintendo isn't the giant it is today. They're known for arcade games, Donkey Kong, Mario, Radar Scope, but they're still trying to figure out how to survive in the home console market. Enter Shigeru Miyamoto, a young designer with big ideas and zero approval. He wanted to make something new, not just another platformer. He wanted space. He wanted players to feel lost and then find their way out. So he started sketching, on paper, with pencils, in a tiny office with no team, no budget. And the result, a concept called The Adventure of Link. But here's the twist. Miyamoto didn't even think it would work. Seriously, he tried to pitch it to his boss as a game where you walk through a forest and fight monsters. His boss said, "That's not a game, that's a walking simulator." And honestly, at first glance, it kinda was. But Miyamoto had a vision. He wanted exploration. He wanted maps, hidden paths. He wanted players to discover things, not be told where to go. So he built a prototype on a Nintendo Famicom system, the Japanese version of the NES. He coded it himself, just him, a keyboard, and a dream. And the result, a game so strange, so different, that even he didn't know what it was. Imagine this, you control a kid, green tunic, sword, bow, you wander through a forest, no hand-holding, no tutorials, just go, find stuff, fight things, try not to die. It felt weird at first, but then something clicked. Players weren't just playing, they were exploring, they were curious, they were asking questions. Where does this path lead? What's behind that wall? Is there a secret door? And that was revolutionary. Because up until then, games were linear. You jumped, you shot, you beat the boss. Done. Fun fact, the original Zelda had only 3 dungeons. Yes, 3. And one of them, Dungeon 3, was actually just a maze with a few traps. But it was so effective, so memorable, that it became a fan favorite. Players still debate whether it was intentional or just lucky. Miyamoto kept refining it. He added a compass, a map, a key system, a save feature, all things that sound basic now, but in 1986, revolutionary. And then came the name, The Legend of Zelda. Why Zelda? Because it was a joke. Miyamoto once said, "I named it after my friend's daughter. She was cute. I thought Zelda sounded mystical, and also kinda silly." But it stuck, and somehow it worked. So the game wasn't born from genius alone. It was born from failure, from doubt, from a man who didn't believe his own idea would fly. But he kept going. And in 1986, The Legend of Zelda launched on the Famicom Disk System in Japan. And the world didn't notice. Well, not at first. But within months, word spread. Kids were spending hours lost in Hyrule. Teachers were getting complaints about students skipping class to play. It wasn't just a game, it was an experience. Fun fact, the original Zelda had no enemy AI. Enemies just walked in straight lines. If you stood still, they'd walk right past you. But players loved it. They'd use it to sneak past. It created a whole new style of gameplay. Stealth, timing, patience, which is basically what modern stealth games are built on. So yes, the game was flawed, but those flaws became strengths. And by 1987, The Legend of Zelda released in North America on cartridge, the NES version, and it exploded. Why? Because people were ready for something different. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't fast, but it was deep, and it gave players something rare: freedom. Not just in gameplay, in imagination. Now let's talk about the story, because Zelda isn't just about beating bosses, it's about a world that feels real. At its core, the story is simple. A hero, a princess, a kingdom, a war between good and evil. But the story changes depending on which game you play. Yes, the lore is massive, and it's not all consistent, but that's part of the charm. Let's start with the basics. In every game, you play as Link, a silent boy from the Kokiri Forest. He's chosen by destiny, he's given a sword, he's sent to rescue Princess Zelda, who is being held captive by Ganon, the embodiment of evil, often depicted as a pig-like demon. And the goal? To collect the Triforce, a sacred relic divided into 3 parts: power, wisdom, and courage. Only the pure of heart can wield it. But before we continue, a quick word. If you're enjoying this story and want to support the channel, you can send a donation to my crypto wallet. Every bit helps me keep making videos like this. Now, back to Hyrule. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The timeline of Zelda is not linear, it's layered. Multiple timelines, alternate realities, reincarnations. There's Skyward Sword, 2011, set in the beginning of the world. Then The Wind Waker, 2002, set in a post-apocalyptic future. Then Ocarina of Time, 1998, considered the pinnacle. Then Breath of the Wild, 2017, which rewrote everything. And yet, each game tells a piece of the same story. They're all connected, but not in a straight line, like a puzzle. Think of it like this. Zelda isn't a single story. It's a myth, a legend passed down across centuries. And that's why it resonates, because it doesn't feel like a game, it feels like a world. And the design? Inspired by real places. Miyamoto traveled through Japan. He visited ancient temples. He studied castles. He drew from folklore. He wanted Hyrule to feel like a real country, with history, culture, ruins, secrets. Even the music? Composed by Koji Kondo. Yes, the same guy who made Mario's theme. He used traditional instruments, flutes, drums, even a koto. And that melody? It's not just catchy, it's emotional. It makes you feel small, wondering, lost, alive. That's the power of Zelda. It shows you a world and says, go, explore, discover, be brave. And that's why millions have played it for decades. So why did Zelda take off? Why did it become more than just a game? Well, let's be honest, it wasn't just the gameplay, it was the feeling. When you play Zelda, you don't just win, you survive, struggle, learn, get lost, fail, try again. And when you finally beat a dungeon, there's a rush, a sense of accomplishment. Miyamoto didn't want easy wins, he wanted challenge, but challenge that felt fair. And that's what keeps people coming back. Fun fact, the original Zelda had no hint system. If you got stuck, you were on your own. Some players spent weeks figuring out how to get past one dungeon, and when they did, they celebrated like they'd conquered a mountain. But beyond gameplay, Zelda tapped into something deeper. It's a story about hope, about courage, about standing up to evil, even when you're scared. And Link, he's silent. Doesn't speak, doesn't complain, he just goes. Kind of like us, right? We don't always have words, but we keep moving. That's why Zelda has such a loyal fan base. People don't just play it, they believe in it. And that belief, it's been amplified over time. Take Ocarina of Time, released in 1998 on the N64. It was the first true 3D action-adventure game. It redefined what games could be. And when Breath of the Wild dropped in 2017, it didn't just break records, it broke rules. No linear path, you could climb anything, light fires, cook food, fly with paragliders. In Breath of the Wild, the developers intentionally left some puzzles unsolvable. They wanted players to feel frustration, then joy, then pride. One puzzle in the Shrine of Resurrection, it takes 12 hours to solve, and 90% of players give up. But those who finish, they scream, they cry, they post videos saying, I did it. And that's the magic. Zelda doesn't just entertain, It turns gamers into explorers, into heroes. But here's the real question. Why is The Legend of Zelda still huge today, almost 40 years later? Because most games don't survive that long. They peak and fade. But Zelda didn't. And the reason is actually kind of genius. The series keeps reinventing itself. Every few years, Nintendo takes a risk. Not a small one. They change how the game works, how the world feels, how players interact with it. And sometimes it completely changes gaming. Take Ocarina of Time. When it released, it didn't just succeed, it rewrote the rules. Lock-on combat, cinematic storytelling, a living 3D world. After that game, the entire industry started copying its design. But then something interesting happened. Years passed, technology improved. Open worlds became bigger, but also more predictable. Players started feeling like games were guiding them too much. And that's when Zelda did it again. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. No path, no forced order, just a world and your curiosity. You see a mountain, you can climb it. You see smoke in the distance, you can go there. You see something weird on the horizon, it's probably a secret. And suddenly, players felt something they hadn't felt in years. Discovery. Real discovery. But here's the deeper reason the series still works. It was never just about mechanics. It was about a feeling. Adventure. Exploration. That moment when you walk somewhere you probably shouldn't and find something incredible. And that idea came from one person, Shigeru Miyamoto. As a kid, he explored forests and caves near his home. Just curiosity. And somehow, that exact feeling made it into the game. That's why Zelda connects with people across generations. Because the formula isn't graphics, it isn't nostalgia, it's something much simpler. Wonder. And as long as games can make people feel that, Zelda isn't going anywhere. Not anytime soon. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, smash that like button and subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring. Bye.